Hey, what's going on, everybody? We're going to take a look at the Cup of Bes. Let's get going. All right. So this was brought up on Siemens video. Tiger Shark, and his vast knowledge that I can't even keep up with, has mentioned this, just like how he's brought up Mandrake several times being in the Bible, and I completely forget in the last live stream as I'm talking about Siemens review. Not that he was saying that was in the Bible, but I was just commenting, and I was like, I don't remember Mandrake being in there. But at this point, my brain can only hold so much information. So as new stuff comes in, some old stuff has pushed out, and then even new things, as I'm watching and reading them, I'll only retain a couple of the big things, and then I'll completely forget. So anyway, here's the Cup of Bes. Now, here we are doing the quest for the burning purple. And when we do this, what we're looking for is ultimately any entheogens from back in the day that could have been, hey, what's going on? Pants, no pants. Well, I have pants on today, but I am doing some videos without me in them for reasons of which y'all can probably imagine or guess. But, I pop my head in here and there, but I got a long day, and I'll be pretty much where I'm at till about 5 p.m. So I was planning on doing a couple of things, but I turned the camera off. But let's get going, guys. So let's go ahead and jump into the Cup of Bes. Now, this little ceremonial drinking cup, I've just read a little bit about it, but we're going to do it here. Researchers have discovered the residues of psychedelic drugs, bodily fluids, and alcohol inside a 2,000-year-old mug, suggesting that ancient Egyptians imbibed hallucinogenic beverages during rituals. I've never used this word. I'll just tell you that. It's the first time scientists have been able to identify chemical signatures of the liquid concoction sipped from the mugs decorated with the head of Bes, an Egyptian deity of fertility, protection, medicinal healing, and magical purification. So right off the bat, this already sounds like the great mysteries. All right. So Bes-shaped vessels were produced over a long period in Egypt, but only a limited number have survived. And all of them have been found within different archaeological contexts, adding to their mysteries. The new findings, published November 13th in the Journal of Scientific Reports, resulted from a study of the residue within a surviving Bes mug that is currently on display at the Tampa Museum of Art. Nice. For a very long time now, Egyptologists have been speculating what mugs with the head of Bes could have been used for, and for what kind of beverage, like sacred water, milk, wine, or beer. In the study, co-author Branko van Oppen, curator of Greek and Roman art at the Tampa Museum of Art, in a statement, experts did not know if these mugs were used in daily life for religious purposes or magic rituals. The research, including chemical DNA analysis, also revealed the first physical evidence of plants with psychotropic and medicinal properties within an Egyptian mug, which validates both written records and myths relating to ancient Egyptian rituals, said lead study author David Tanasi, professor and director of digital exploration at the University of South Florida. Religion is one of the most fascinating and puzzling aspects of ancient civilization, Tanasi said in a statement. With this study, we found scientific proof that the Egyptian myths have some kind of truth, but it helps us shed light on the poorly understood rituals that were likely carried out in the Bes chambers in Saqqara, near the Great Pyramids at Giza. Of course, guys, life sucked back then. Why wouldn't you be drinking magical concoctions, right? Researchers have long been intrigued by Bes mugs precisely because there was little context for understanding how the vessels were used. Yeah. What's these drinking cups for? Oh, I don't know. Making it difficult to hypothesize about their roles and rituals or contents they carried. Really? Really? All right. So overall, the Bes vessels were not ordinary artifacts, but rather ritual objects that were manufactured in limited number and acquired by those individuals who worshipped Bes and participated in the rituals revolving around it. Tanasi said, very likely those individuals got to keep the vessels after they were used to perform the rituals as a reminder the ritual was actually performed. Well, who cares? I mean, that's awesome, though. Tanasi and his colleague dove into the mug mystery as part of the larger study on ancient Mediterranean nutrition, focusing on the Bes artifact that had been donated to Tampa Museum of Art in 1984. After scraping the walls of the mug, the scientists pulverized the resulting sample and determined the recipe of sorts based on the substances that had stained the cup with overlapping residues. The study team expected to find the remnants of a potent alcoholic beverage given to the container's small size, which was 1.7 inches, 4.5 centimeters in height, could hold 4.2 fluid ounces. Okay, so 4 ounces. But the researchers were surprised by the varied mixture. I wonder why you were so surprised. Their analysis detected 4 substance categories: an alcoholic base, flavoring agents, human bodily fluids, and medicinal and psychotropic ingredients. The detection of fermentation yeast suggests the concoction had a base of beer or wine, which was enhanced with flavors from honey or possibly royal jelly or wine made from honey, sesame seeds, pine nuts, licorice, and grapes. Ancient Egyptians commonly used grapes to make beverages resemble blood, according to the study. Okay. I think it just so happens to be red, but okay. The bodily fluids were possibly a mix of blood, breast milk, and mucus, which may have been vaginal, nasal, or saliva. Researchers said, and they believe these were added deliberately based on their concentrations. And among the plants included were Egyptian blue water lily. Here we go. I covered a little bit of this, even though it's unrelated to the burning purple. The ephemeron, the antidote for it is the Madonna lily, which, ironically, we see this with Mother Mary in a lot of artwork. And if I were to be creative for just 1 second, it's almost as if there is alternate biblical apothecary, if you will. There's biblical in theogenic references, but also the Madonna lily being an antidote to something like the ephemeron or the meadow saffron was interesting because, the Virgin Mother, it being an antidote itself. Now, I'm not saying that they were drinking this and milking it from her breast, but the antidote nonetheless. But I found that to be a little ironic, but I did mention the blue water lily just because they were talking about the Madonna lily, just to get the point across that various different lilies or lotus have been used in theogenic artwork, such as like Buddha on the lotus, or the Land of the Lotus Eaters with the Odyssey, or the blue water lily that we do see in the artwork with Egyptians holding the blue water lily and psilocybin mushrooms, it seems. Anyway, and Syrian rue. So everybody that's all into the ayahuasca, the Banisteriopsis capi monoamine oxidase inhibitor, if you will. This is the Mediterranean version of the ayahuasca vine. This is the MAO MAOI that people were adding to these concoctions to allow either the different substances to be bioavailable in the body or to enhance the experience, which contain hallucinogenic, medicinal, intoxicating, and sedative properties that can alter perception and enhance visionary experiences, Tanasi said. Also present were species of the Cleome plant, which is known to induce labor or at high doses abortion. All right, so this is right around the same, field of study. Now, I don't know anything about the Cleome or the Cleome plant, but I do know that ergot was used to help induce labor. And nowadays, we just gave birth, my wife, she's doing amazing. She just had a natural birth. But one of the things that they will still use to induce labor is an oxytocin derivative that they call Pitocin, which will throw your body aggressively into labor. Now, I can imagine that something that can throw your body into labor taken earlier on in high doses could potentially engage an abortion. in a more natural way, if you will. But nevertheless, let's keep on moving through this. All right, so sorry, I had to do something real quick. So let's go back to CNN. All right, so this research teaches us about magic rituals in the Greco-Roman period in Egypt. So remember, guys, different dynasties, different empires, they've come and gone through this story that we've sort of deciphered. One thing I like to say is I make the joke that Judaism is a ripoff of Zoroastrianism. But with all the different dynasties that have been present through their story, you get a lot of cross-pollination with a lot of different cultures, for sure. So this Greco-Roman period in Egypt, Ben often says, Egyptologists believe that people visited the so-called best chambers. All right. At Saqqara, when they wished to confirm the successful pregnancy, because pregnancies in the ancient world were fraught with dangers, absolutely. So this combination of ingredients may have been used in a dream vision inducing magic ritual within the context of this dangerous period of childbirth. Yes, you can totally see this for sure. Written records, iconography, and archaeological evidence from seeds and charred plants was known that Egyptians were familiar with the plants and the side effects from consuming them. Yeah, and well before 2,000 years ago, might I add. We were surprised with the complex recipe of the concoction, I guess. See, this is where archaeologists, without the same background in ethnobotany and anthropology, may not have heard of some of the things that we're talking about before they're digging these things up out the ground. Now, here's the one thing I do think that a lot of any scholar, you know, they're scared of anybody that's not got the PhD Ranger tab. They're scared of anybody finding something before an archaeologist does, which is where we see Flint Dibble pushing back on a lot of the Graham Hancock stuff, even though his theory on the Sphinx is not ridiculous. But once again, archaeologists, you know, they're the ones they're holding and driving the narrative for what you're allowed to believe in, sort of. All right, so let's keep going down. Studying chemical samples from other vases in the future could reveal whether the mugs were used during singular events or just a part of widespread practice, the authors wrote in the study. Well, let's just say you found, you know, archaeology finds 1 to 5%. So, you know, if all you found was hypothetically 5% of the drinking chalices, then, you know, do the math on how many there were. Not to mention, you know, just different, you know, losing stuff, breaking things, you know, just all kinds of reasons why. But, you know, this seems like it was a little bit more, you know, special than just some vase in your house, you know. They identified substances more likely studying chemical samples from best vases future reveal. Going forward, the team hopes to carry out similar analysis on additional examples of best mugs at the other museums to determine whether all the vessels contain the same recipe. Well, they might. Egyptian rituals of drunkenness, identifying whether specific inorganic, organic, or psychotropic elements from the best mug is a welcome discovery. Let's see what we got here. Sorry, I was checking said Dr. Betsy Bryan, the Alexander Badawi Emerita Professor of Egyptian Art and Archaeology at Johns Hopkins University. Bryan was not involved with the new study. There's more variation in size of the best mugs than noted in the study, Bryan said, which could certainly have an impact on the dosage or the purpose of the hallucinogens. Yeah. If the authors have demonstrated the context correctly, then the dream-inducing drugs were mixed with both honey and breast milk. Okay. And this would certainly be most compatible with assisting women in childbirth or in lactation. Bryan said in the email, a tiny cup perhaps would have been used by a woman seeking help from the temple of priest magician. The large cups may have been held liquid consumed by priests or or by other congregants with different needs. Determining the ancient Egyptian designations for the plants used in concoctions, with the exception of the known Egyptian water lily, will be crucial in trying to identify recipes from Greco-Roman temples, Brian said. Blue water lily has been noted for both textual and artistic evidence suggesting it's added to the alcoholic drinks. And yeah, but also in the same artwork, there's psilocybin mushrooms. So I like how everyone likes to focus on the blue water lily and not so much the other stuff in the picture. The associate professor Cornelius. Inebriation played an important role in some ancient Egyptian festivals, especially festivals associated with the flooding of the Nile. The floodwaters irrigated and fertilized the fields to enable growth of new crops, but they were also associated with the goddess of the eye of the sun, sometimes identified as Hathor, she said. Alcoholic offerings would be offered to Hathor during the floods, including as part of a festival of drunkenness held to appease her, Barrett said. We have depiction of these festivals in tomb scenes that depicted banqueteers drinking heavily, saying that they want to become inebriated as fast as possible, and even vomiting when they overindulge. Well, it sounds like me when I was in the army. Barrett said, Bes and the other gods who resemble Bes often act the attendants of Hathor in Egyptian art and religion, so it certainly seems possible that some Bes vases could have been used in Hathoric rituals, for sure. All right, let's go over to ChatGPT. All right, so once again, ChatGPT, nothing special here, just simply pulling up things so that we can get sort of a different summary in a sort of an expedited fashion here. Now, granted, this is ChatGPT, guys, so if anything's popping up that's not real or true or whatever, you know what to do. The Cup of Bes is an object from late antiquity that depicts the Egyptian dwarf god Bes, who is associated with protection, fertility, music, and ecstatic ritual. What is it? It's usually a terracotta or I don't know how to say that, faience vessel shaped like or decorated with images of Bes, the lion-faced dwarf-like protector deity. These cups often had wide mouths and were meant for drinking. Shit. Where they appear, they have been found mainly in Alexandria and the Eastern Mediterranean, dated from the Ptolemaic and Roman periods, 3rd century BC to 3rd century CE. All right, so about 600-year reign here. Scholars think they were used during ritual drinking, possibly of wine or psychoactive potions, invoking Bes as the guardian during intoxication. These cups even have inscriptions like "Drink and be merry" in Greek. Very cool. Since Bes was tied to music, dance, sexuality, and apotropic magic, the cup would connect drinking with protection, fertility, and festive ritual. Some argued they might have been linked to Dionysian or mystery cult practices, emerging Egyptian and Greek traditions. Now, this is exactly what we talk about here, is the cross-pollination and how it's not the craziest thing in the world to think that the real life version of this guy that they have called Jesus in the Bible, considering that he went into a practice when he was 12, or he disappeared at 12 and came back at 29 years old. Some guy named John the Baptist living in leopard skin, leather briefs, brings him in to the practice. But from the artwork, we're seeing a guy walking around with an alabastron with a shaved face who's 33 years old. And then in some later artwork, we see other theories and stuff. And so I don't think it's that crazy to assume that some guy whose name means an anointed one, and there's an apothecary present in the Bible, and you have these mother-like figures, which after all, we were worshiping the great mother during all of these type of ceremonies. Why? Because they give birth to things, and it's extremely life-changing moment for women that only women can carry the torch for. And even though I have absolutely all respect for anybody out there who is a male, obviously the women anatomy is unique, considering that people that do have penises are not able to gestate a child. So there is a worshiping of this pregnancy, if you will, which of course is mother goddesses. And in every freaking culture, there seems to be a worship of women, especially if they're super fertile. And the artwork will show you some things that were connected with fertility, such as round hips, big boobs, all the things, right? Well, this is a dude deity. However, God's, it might be more masculine, but that's just where they were in their timeline of making drinking vessels. They happened to have this god of fertility that was a midget. But it wouldn't be crazy to think that Jesus the Christ would have had a knowledge of this stuff, including the grain that he was eating in Matthew 12 and Luke 6. He absolutely knows what that weird fungus growing on the heads of those grain stalks. He knows exactly what it is, even if they don't talk about it directly. They do mention an indiscriminate harvesting, if you will, of a guy who can make baskets of bread and fish just show up out of his asshole. The act of desperation to go and have this house guest Big Mac scene of him wolfing down the heads of grain as an act of rebellion. There's no real food preparation going on here. This guy's starving to death the way he's eating the grains of these things, but that's not what they're doing. That's not what they're doing. There'd be no reason in hell that a guy who has a conveyor belt of fish and bread out of his buttocks would have to go into a field of grain and eat off the heads of it, before going to the temple, mind you. And then, of course, his analogy was comparing David eating consecrated bread. So I would love people that like to say, oh, that's because he was harvesting the grain on the Sabbath. Like, yeah, but you need to zoom out a little bit more. You know how ridiculous that sounds as being what he's doing? He's not just harvesting the grain. He's not making it into bread out there in the middle of the field. So, but remember, Jews had laws. He had to have a beard at 33. And there's all these pictures of him with no beard. That's where this whole eunuch thing comes from, and the no kids, and the intricately crafted mug depicted in ancient Key was donated to the Tampa Museum of Art. Okay, this is going to have the exact same shit. I mean, word for word. That's what it seems like. But here we have the vessel. Nice. Let's you turn it around. See, this is something I would love to have a little recreation of this in my house. This is the kind of stuff that I grew up with in my house, with different, different remakes of stuff like this, or forgery, fakes. I can never freaking think of what I want to say when I'm on these things. Yep. University to protein from blood, vaginal mucus, prostate, breast milk were identified. Okay. In the Greek cult of Asclepios, the god of medicine, sick worshippers had to spend the night in the sanctuary, wait to be visited by the god during God curing them during their dreams. Tanasi adds, those dreams were triggered by drugs, pharmaca, dispensed by the priests. So our research confirms the earlier practice that has later comparisons in several other cultures. All right, so one thing that I'll talk about real quick, let me cut this off, and I hate to give y'all my little circular bubble with the little decibel meter protruding from it. But we've talked about the concept of Jesus going to not only Egypt, but India. And now there's a few books written on it. There's a few books written on a lot of things that, wouldn't even be true, but there's a few books on it. Now, let's just say that, let's say that when these, younger guys get into the practice, if that's where they show their interest and they want to, work their way into this, and coming into the practice at 12 years old, hypothetically, there's been theories that Jesus went to Egypt. So considering that these Cup of Bes, 2,000 years old, it's the same time frame as, Jesus specifically. And there's just no way he's not gonna know this hypothetical fictional character from what we call the New Testament. There's no way he wouldn't have known what's going on in these different cultures that he's visiting. I mean, after all, when you're traveling the lands, you're, quote, quote, doing as the Romans do. But I'm not saying that this is something that they started getting introduced to. I can't make any claims for this fictitious group of, rebels or whatever, but he's definitely going to know what this is. What anybody from this time period is going to know, before they even know how to write, they know what these things are. So just remember that everybody that back in the day, you had to learn how to write in order to write anything, to read the Greek, whatever, either to read the Septuagint, and typically if you went and learned this, the theory is that Jesus went to Egypt and he learned how to write, and that he would have learned any of the cultural surrounding things in regards to, plants, anything that has to do with it. And, we see this later with the Mary character. We see her alabaster jars, spikenard. I would only imagine that people that have these magic concoctions or anointing oils would have a fairly good knowledge in various different plants, not just one or two or three, but a multitude of them. Now, they might not specifically talk about some of the strong stuff in the Bible, but in the last episode earlier today, we talked about mandrake, and Allie Rowan pointed out that mandrake is in the Bible now, unbeknownst to myself. Having heard this and forgotten it once, Tiger Shark has brought this up, I believe, on 2 different prior lives. He can correct me. I can't remember. But it's gotten to the point now where it's so overwhelming. The entire concept of there being in theogenic practice has become very overwhelming. Now, granted, this is all I'm really looking for, because after all, we all know the practices of, we all know what the generic storyline for the religion is. Like, we all know, like just because we study the religion more doesn't make it any more true. You can study the religion a lot, but it's not going to make it any more true, unless we're going to have the assumption that, unless we're going to have some sort of assumption that Jesus was, or anyway, I'm rambling on here. Let's look at some of the comments. Oh my gosh, I have been missing so much. Dynorphin is an endogenous opioid peptide that generally inhibits dopamine release through its action on the kappa opioid receptors, particularly within the dopamine system. This inhibition contributes to the negative affective states such as depression and anxiety, and plays a role in the development of drug addiction. Stress can increase dynorphin levels, leading to mood disorders by dysregulating the dopamine system. Some of the chalices are shaped like a uterus. Yeah, I would say that some of them are shaped like a uterus. Granted, I think it's very convenient, the shape of both objects. Sort of bottle-like when you're looking at diagrams of what we're talking about, But I think that those are things that make their way into the artwork also, even if there are coincidences. I absolutely 100%. Woman. What's going on, Amanda? Tiger Shark. What's going on? Yeah, I've been reading the thing and not watching the word. Does the word beast stem from Bes? I doubt it, but I see what you're saying and what you're doing. Bes has other planets. It's all about sexual increase. Bes, the god of fertility. Yes, sir. All right, so we have some pictures down here. Let's share this tab. Make sure it's up. And I don't know what happened to Marcel. Marcel gone. All right. So here we have, let's see what I'm looking at. All right, cool. Sorry, guys, I'm got my head up my ass for this. So, okay, so here we go. Some more cups. Now, they all look exactly the same. It's probably the exact same one. Literally is, based off of how the nose looks. Here's some images of archaeological examples of Cup of Bes mugs topped with the heads of Bes, often ceramic, used in ritual context. So you got Nature magazine. So they're talking about Syrian rue and the blue water lily. Okay. Fruit liquids, some breast milk. It's all very potential possible. Even if it doesn't work, them trying different things is not particularly insane thing. Did a lot of experiments and stuff back then. And unfortunately, sometimes people would even die just depending on, yeah, I could do that. Let's see. Boom. All right. So the one thing I wanted to see was if there was any YouTube videos on the Cup of Bes, and I wasn't able to find any. All right. So Cup of Bes. Egyptian. Let's see if there's any videos on this. Hyatt 9 News, 9 months ago, 65. Well, my own video is the only one showing. Dream Potion discovered Tales in Europe mug. Ha ha! Here we go. Here we go, y'all. We're gonna share this other tab. That way, you don't have to stare at my little circle.
Study by Davida Tanasi, a professor at the University of South Florida, has revealed the contents of a 2,000-year-old Egyptian Bes mug. This rare artifact, housed at the Tampa Museum of Art, was found to have held a psychedelic concoction used in ancient rituals. Analysis uncovered an unusual mixture, including an alcoholic base, honey, sesame seeds, pine nuts, licorice, and psychotropic substances such as Syrian rue and blue water lily. The presence of human fluids like blood and breast milk further indicated its use in ceremonial contexts.
Is this guy reading the same article that we've just read, that someone else stole the same article and put on their article?
The research suggests the concoction played a role in incubation rituals, where participants sought divine visions through induced dreams. These rituals, associated with the Egyptian deity Bes, aimed to provide healing or guidance. Similar practices existed in other cultures, such as the Greek cult of Asclepios, where priests administered substances to facilitate healing dreams. The findings link the ancient potion to broader ritualistic traditions across civilizations. This study offers the first physical evidence supporting written records and myths about Egyptian magical practices. The unique combination of ingredients underscores the sophistication of ancient ritualistic preparations. The inclusion of psychotropic components suggests these potions were designed to create altered states of consciousness, enhancing their religious and ceremonial significance. The Bes mug is now part of the Tampa Museum of Art's Prelude, an introduction to the permanent collection exhibit. Further research.
Very nice video. Very nice video. I could probably make videos like this on my own and use AI to narrate them for me and everything. Let's go ahead and back out here. What do we got? Bes.
Question. This is the Egyptian god called Bes. He's a minor god, considered a warrior god, a protector god, and a god of fertility because he is described as having a large phallus. This is a relief of Bes on a large stone in Egypt. The stone is about 4 feet high. He looks like a thick, hairy man with very large ears and stubby legs. In fact, he's very hairy. Also, you might note that most of Egyptian hieroglyphics face sideways. He's probably the only one that faces forward. His role was to protect a young Horus from his uncle Set, who had already killed and dismembered his father Osiris. Here is a small statue of young Horus, and at the top you can see Bes's head. A few years ago, I was told by a fellow researcher that the placement of Bes's head was meant to represent...
Real quick, we have a comment here from Sarah Jane McDonald. Has anyone heard the women's skein glands or skein glands? It's physiologically possible for women to do what Amon claims. Yes, absolutely possible. 100% possible. I would love to make a joke right now but I will probably refrain from it because I'm a happily married man. But yeah, it's possible. All right. It's totally possible. Let me not make any jokes.
his height compared to the child Horus. In fact, he told me that Bes was an ancient Sasquatch, a Bigfoot that could talk. As ridiculous as this may sound to some, I considered it for a while. It is true that other ancient cultures had stories of monkey men, like the Hindu god called Hanuman. But unlike Hanuman, Bes does not have a tail. In the older Sumerian culture, in the story of Gilgamesh, there is also a giant man-beast called Enkidu.
Enkidu. Yeah, this does remind me of Sasquatch. That's one of my nicknames is Bigfoot. I'm cursed with gigantic feet and hands, whatever. Mainly my feet, though. I wear like a size 14, so it's impossible to find shoes that I like. And I'm built like Bigfoot. And typically, when there's pictures of me walking, the frozen image of me is always in Bigfoot stature. It's always the Bigfoot pose, the looking back, dumb and lost sort of thing. I totally do it.
Also described as being very hairy, who became Gilgamesh's best friend since he was strong enough to wrestle him. Also, there is Huwawa, who was defeated by Gilgamesh and Enkidu. What kind of monkey or ape men are these? For comparison, this is a Gigantopithecus, now believed extinct so far as we know. It also has stubby legs, long arms, hairless chest, and it is a giant.
Oh, Gigantopithecus. Wait a minute. The anthropology kid here. Or the wannabe. My mom was. But yeah. So I could definitely see where some of these ideas may look a lot like the early humans.
There is a bit of a similarity to Bes, but it confused me because the relief of Bes is only 3 or 4 feet high.
Now, there are some other hominid humans from the past that don't get the most attention in the world. It's even in the realm of archaeology, whether it be the whether it be giant humans or shorter humans. There's more than what they talk about nowadays. You know, oh, Denisovans. Oh, not yet. There's a lot more.
Okay, let's say he's not a Sasquatch. Let's say he's a dwarf. I dug through ancient Egyptian texts to see if any other creature existed. I found this. In the book called Writings from Ancient Egypt, translated by Toby Wilkinson, there is a letter sent from the dual king Neferkara, also called Pepi II, to a man called Harkuf. Pepi
II,
a boy king at this time, praised Harkuf for his expeditions, and this letter was inscribed on Harkuf's tomb, which is still legible to this day, almost 4,000 years later. It's rather amazing, don't you think? Speaking of Pepi,
yeah, I mean, considering that the theory is that the tombs were there a lot older, but they started graffitiing them somewhat.
II, there are 3 ancient resources that point to him being the pharaoh during the time of Moses' youth. I did a video about it called The Pharaoh of Exodus. Check it out if you get a chance. In this inscription, it is described that Pepi II asked Harkuf to bring with him a dancing dwarf from the land of Yam. Quote, "You have said in this message of yours that you have..."
Mandy Moorhall keeps talking about these dwarfs and these satires and stuff, so...
"brought all produce great and beautiful, which is given by Hathor, lady of Emau, for the spirit of the dual king Neferkara, who lives forever and ever. You have further said in this message of yours that you have brought a dwarf of the..."
All right, so I have a comment here. We got the pagan pilgrimage. Bigfoot isn't real anyways. They're just projections of interdimensional beings. You know, I've watched, I think we've all watched Bigfoot documentaries, alien documentaries. We've all watched flat earth documentaries. We've watched everything that's anything out there. Because we all know the scholastic answer for everything on the planet. Right? You know, the moon landings, absolutely real. Jesus is the only person. It's a redaction of all the other half deities walking around the earth. It's completely okay to believe in that, but you can't believe in anything that might even just seem interesting and whatnot. But Bigfoot is one of these. I laugh at the Bigfoot one a little bit. Now, here's the thing: interdimensional beings. Perhaps. But who can say what is complete bullshit versus, something that's actually possible? So if there was a strain of humans that were secretly living in the woods, well, that secret human that's living needs to have a partner to mate with and then have kids to keep it still alive by the 1970s or something. So unless there's a whole tribe of people that are somehow not inbreeding and keeping this Bigfoot man going, if you will, it's absolutely silly. But thinking that we're seeing stuff from another dimension also goes into that category of, conspiracy and whatnot. You watch these movies like Skinwalker Ranch, and, they're interesting stories and all. They make for great stories, but I have a hard time believing that there's this sort of veil that sort of separates a different dimension, and that there's this Bigfoot looking character. I think that we've created the character, even if you go back to these stories, this looks like it would be where some of the forging of the Bigfoot theory could have started here for sure. Let's just keep going.
God's dances from the land of the horizon dwellers, like the dwarf of the god's seal bearer Bawer Jed, brought from Punt in the time of King Isesi. End quote. But it goes on to say, quote again, my majesty wishes to see this particular dwarf more than the produce of Sinai and Punt, end quote. So here in this letter, there's this mention of another dwarf similar to the one that Harkuf was to bring to dance before Pepi II. So, was Bes a dwarf, similar to the line of dancing dwarves that Pepi II saw? Or maybe these dwarves that Pepi II saw were just little people that were dancing. Who knows? Oh, look at that. Here, he's depicted as a giant Sasquatch. Most certainly.
Well, I love all of this artwork, number one. But there is, I see the comments here. Half joking, but there's a ton of podcasts to subscribe with. They associate a lot of times with UFO flaps. Yeah, so the thing that I love is the fact that there's so many Bigfoot sightings, but we can never get it on camera. We can never get a picture. And as a joke, I'm just going to make the reference to Ghost Hunters. Remember the show Ghost Hunters? I don't know how many seasons there are, but I used to make the joke, 16 seasons of Ghost Hunter, not a single ghost on camera. Let's go. I'm joking too, by the way, guys.
He does not look like a normal man. Not whatsoever. Let me know what you think in the comments. I don't have the answer, but the question is the thing. What kind of man was he? Or was he a man? Dwarf?
Now, the dwarves, we see those on ayahuasca experiences. We see these dwarves, these gnomes. Even near-death experiences, guys talk about seeing these little dwarves and gnomes that seem to be like the little helpers for the big man or the big woman in the other realm. Or maybe there's both, or maybe it's the same thing. But yeah, so we've seen these midgets,
Giant or Sasquatch. Without a doubt, ancient history is crazy.
I made the joke that this picture of Sasquatch that was ripped from the other photo and put here with the Loch Ness Monster, I was like, you know what? There's probably some camp counselor in the 70s who had like a bear outfit that they made from a bear skin. And he probably just went walking and his friend was like, hey, look over here, and took a picture. And or it was recording the video. But I had this whole fake skit about the real Bigfoot I used my own name in this joke. It was, oh no, the Bigfoot, no, that's Steve. He's a camp counselor. 1969, so-and-so, so-and-so. And it's this big, some guy smoking a cigarette telling about the story of his friend Steve. Well, he killed a bear. He skinned it alive and he made a bear suit. Yeah, that's just Steve, just in the bear costume. I say, I don't know about the Bigfoot thing, but I know him, something like that. Let's see what we got going on.
Egyptian mythology is full of majestic and grand deities, but few are as curious and intriguing as Bes. This dwarf god, with his peculiar appearance and unexpected functions, played a crucial role in the daily life of ancient Egypt. Get ready to discover the full story of Bes, a protector of homes, pregnant women, and children, and one of the most beloved gods of this fascinating civilization. Bes was not a conventional god in the Egyptian pantheon. Unlike the elegant and majestic figures of Isis, Osiris, or Ra, Bes was a dwarf with a robust and even grotesque appearance, often depicted with a thick beard, disheveled hair, and his tongue sticking out.
Now, from what I can remember, some of the people talking about these dwarfs or gnomes have had them not look like us and not quite like the seven dwarves that we think of wearing the Phrygian caps. They've talked about them looking like, kind of like the creatures from Bill and Ted, the station, the weird looking things that like run into each other and create like a bigger version of them. Anyway, it looked kind of like that from this one description, which looks like this, well, similar. Obviously, this has this sort of a cultural theme going on with the artwork, but
out. But despite his appearance, he was loved by the people. Bes was the protector of homes and families, the god who warded off evil spirits and dark forces that could threaten the daily lives of the Egyptians. His role was to protect the most vulnerable moments of life, such as the birth of a child or the nightly sleep, when it was believed that demons could attack. While most Egyptian gods were depicted elegantly and in profile, Bes was shown head-on, something extremely rare in Egyptian art. He had short legs, a robust body, a fierce expression, and often held a knife or played musical instruments like the drum or the lute. His frightening face was not without purpose. It served to scare off enemies and evil spirits. His tongue sticking out, for example, was a symbol of challenge and intimidation against any negative force that approached. Bes had a special connection to the home and, especially, to women and children. He was called upon to protect childbirth, moments considered dangerous in ancient times, and ensure the health of the baby. His images were placed on bedposts, in decorative objects, and even in amulets used by pregnant women. Additionally, Bes was also the guardian of sleep. He chased away nightmares and warded off negative influences during the night, ensuring that families had a peaceful rest. Bes was not just a guardian, he was also associated with fun and joy. The Egyptians believed he played music and danced to drive away evil and bring happiness to households.
All right, so just taking a look at some of the comments real quick, guys. Trauma can lead to increased dynorphin release, activating the cortical system in the brain circuits like the amygdala, which can trigger anxiety-like behaviors, dysphoria, and contribute to maladaptive responses seen in PTSD. Yes, I can vouch for this. Being through traumatic experiences can absolutely alter, if you will, how you handle anything, how you think about things, how you respond to things. Unfortunately, I have been through a lot of traumatic shit. And I talked about a little bit of the Army stuff, and then of course, everyone has their own things. Y'all have all been through traumatic shit too. Y'all have been through stuff that might even be worse than a 19-year-old soldier getting blown up or, getting heavily mortared all night or something and thinking you're going to die because you can't escape the death. Everywhere you turn, it's getting destroyed with mortars or whatever. Getting blown up, getting shot at, having to shoot, and having to pay attention to what you're doing when you do engage, even just having to, make those decisions in a split of a second can be very traumatic for sure. And I can definitely resonate with what you're saying here.
His cults were joyful, and he was frequently invoked during parties and celebrations. In some depictions, Bes appears as a dancing, smiling god full of energy.
So it does seem kind of like an early Dionysus, a slightly different vibe, but it's got that, the festival, the good times. He's one of the good times gods, but he had some other roles as well. And it seemed like they kind of had their own job description back in the day. Some would sound similar to others, but then in a few ways would sound a little different.
Bringing lightness to daily life. Amulets of Bes were extremely popular in ancient Egypt. They were used for protection against evil, especially during childbirth and infancy. Additionally, small statues of Bes were common in homes, temples, and even tombs to ensure continuous protection in the afterlife. Rituals for Bes often included music and dance, reflecting his role as a joyful god. Musical instruments such as drums and lutes were played in his honor. The origin of Bes is still a mystery. He was not part of the major dynasties of gods like Osiris and Isis, but it is believed that he emerged from foreign influences, possibly from Nubia to the south of Egypt. However, his cult spread rapidly, and he became a popular figure among all social classes. Bes did not have grand temples like other gods, but his cult was intimate and familial. He was a god of the people, present in the everyday life of common Egyptians. Over time,
Real quick, John the Baptist wore a leopard garment of some kind. And what popped into my head when I saw this, just with absolutely zero validity at all, was this guy's wearing a cheetah garment.
the cult of Bes spread beyond the borders of Egypt, reaching regions such as Greece and Rome. In Greece, he was associated with lesser gods of laughter and joy, while in Rome, his image was used as a symbol of protection. The legacy of Bes can be seen in amulets and artifacts found in excavations from various parts of the Mediterranean, indicating his popularity outside of Egypt. Bes continues to fascinate scholars and history enthusiasts. His appearance and role as a protector of the family make him a unique and captivating figure in Egyptian mythology. In exhibits of Egyptian artifacts, objects related to Bes always attract attention due to their uniqueness. He also inspires modern stories about protection, joy, and the fight against evil, reinforcing his connection with universal themes that remain
I call this guy the kickstand.
relevant today. Bes represents the more human side of Egyptian mythology. While many gods were revered for ruling the heavens, the Nile, or the underworld, Bes was there to protect the simple and precious moments of life. He was the defender of the home, the guardian of sleep, and the symbol of joy. His popularity shows that in ancient Egypt, the gods were not just distant
My man don't care. He's just all out there with it.
and intangible figures. They were present in daily life, bringing comfort and protection in practical and personal ways. Bes may not have been the most
I'll tell you the personal way.
powerful or grand of the Egyptian gods, but he was undoubtedly one of the most beloved. His peculiar appearance and his mission to protect and bring joy make him a unique figure in the history of Egyptian mythology. What about you? Have you ever imagined what it would be like to live in a world where such a peculiar god as Bes protected your home and family? He reminds us that even the small moments of life deserve protection and celebration. Bes was widely represented in statues and amulets worn by Egyptians of all social classes. These objects were made from materials such as ceramic, faience, stone, and gold, seen as powerful talismans against evil. Their main function was to protect against evil spirits, negative influences, and dangers, especially during pregnancy and childbirth. The figures of Bes showed his fierce face, tongue sticking out and often holding knives or musical instruments, symbolizing his protective strength. As the protector of sleep, Bes was represented on bedposts, primarily in the rooms of pregnant women and children. Excavations revealed beds decorated with his image, strategically placed to ward off nightmares and protect during the night. In addition, household objects such as mirrors, combs, and cosmetic boxes also featured representations of Bes, demonstrating his close connection with daily life and the quest for protection. Bes frequently appeared in mural paintings and reliefs, found in Egyptian homes and palaces. These representations were intended to protect the environment from
I love how there's a blue theme happening with Bes. And like they said in the articles, that the blue water lily, now they didn't mention that that's the chemicals that they found. They were very vague on the specific chemicals, as far as like they said Syrian rue and blue water lily. So I'm guessing that that blue water lily, that blue color, just like we've been saying on the show, has obviously a connection with various different entheogenic plants or the roots of different plants. just depending on what it is you're talking about.
Negative energies and bring joy to the home. Although Bes did not have temples dedicated exclusively to him, his figure was widely used in small shrines and religious decorations, reinforcing his importance as a protector of domestic life. As he was associated.
I'm just going to ask a stupid question. Is that why is that where the whole marriage, nursery rhyme, if you will, it's like something borrowed and something blue, when that old, it's kind of it's sort of modern day, sort of a little riddle, if you will, that they did with new brides. I'm asking the question. I'm not making a statement.
With music and dance, Bes was represented in musical instruments like tambourines and lutes, used in celebrations and religious ceremonies. Archaeologists have found several instruments decorated with his image, which were also used in rituals aimed at driving away evil and celebrating moments of happiness. The image of Bes was found on various vessels and containers used in religious rituals and to store medicinal or cosmetic substances. Many of these artifacts, made of materials like alabaster, were recovered from tombs, indicating that Bes had a protective role in the journey of the dead to the afterlife. Additionally, vessels with his figure reinforce the idea that Bes was a constant presence in the domestic and spiritual life of the Egyptians. In the ancient city of Amarna, excavations revealed colorful murals featuring Bes in residences. This reinforces his importance as a protector of the home and children. Some theories suggest that Bes had a special connection with royal figures like Nefertiti, due to his role in protecting mothers and children. These findings in Amarna illustrate how Bes was integrated into daily life in different social contexts. Bes was not confined to Egyptian territory. Excavations in places like Pompeii and other regions of the Mediterranean have revealed statues and amulets of him. His popularity spread across cultures such as the Greek and Roman, where he was reinterpreted as a symbol of joy and protection. This cultural dissemination demonstrates the universality of the figure of Bes as a guardian against evil and a symbol of happiness. Studies on Bes continue to progress. Recent discoveries in Nubian sites suggest that his origins may be linked to that region, indicating that he was incorporated into the Egyptian pantheon from external influences. Researchers have also explored his psychological role as an emotional security figure.
So here we see just the theory that a surrounding culture had this particular interesting god, and that potentially that's where the idea came from. And that's one of the things that we talk about here is where did they get it from, and where did they get it from, and where did they get it from, and it goes all the way back to Göbekli Tepe. So it's close to the same region, but the left and right margins through the centuries.
For families, especially in times of crisis. Archaeological evidence shows that Bes was one of the most present gods in the daily life of the Egyptians. He not only protected homes and families, but also symbolized joy and celebration. His unique and fierce face, combined with his benevolent nature, made him a figure adored for centuries. Bes remains a fascinating representation of the spiritual and cultural complexity of ancient Egypt. Did you enjoy learning more about the mysteries and curiosities of ancient Egypt?
Yes. Yes, I did. Egyptian glass in the desert. Egyptian psychedelic drinks, Pompeii victims. Mystery. Oh, this guy looks cool. Well, guys, I appreciate everybody tuning in to this past hour on the Cup of Bes. So now we have an episode individually talking about this. Catch me either later today or at the next live stream. But for now, you guys, I appreciate it. I will see y'all soon.